What's going on, folks? I have arrived in Texas. I am near El Paso at a place called the Salt Flats. That's where I'm staying tonight, in a yurt. A fire going, got some whiskey. A drive down to Las Colinas is about 18 hours from Phoenix, which is too long for me. I'm too old for that. So, stopped in the halfway point over here. It's really nice out here. It's a bunch of stars, but my phone can't capture them. Black Friday is in 2 days, so I'm gonna get a new vlogging phone if it's in stores. But I am here to play some 510 in Dallas. I got 2 weeks here, and I'm gonna grind as much as I can, hoping to put in about 100 hours over the 2 weeks and win about $10,000. That sounds pretty good. So, when this video comes out, it will be Friday, Black Friday. If people have leftover money, hopefully they're willing to put it on the table and play with me. Let's get to some hands. Before we get into the hands, there are a few things I wanted to cover. The mustache cam, as you all have colloquially named it, is back. So you'll be seeing my face during the hands. I am also using a new camera angle. There are cup holders in the poker table at the Las Colinas Texas Card House, which makes filming from the rail quite tough. So I'm using a low down angle. Because of that, some of the hands are a little dark. I did cover up a bit too much light, so you might not be able to see some of the hole cards. But I'll figure it out. I'm just a bit worried about the person to my left seeing my hole cards unless I'm in seat 3 or 8. And when those seats aren't available to seat change, it's kind of tough to not expose my cards and get them on camera, but I'll figure out a way. Don't you worry. There's no 510. I played Friday night, Saturday night, no 510. They had like 5 tables of 2-5 and then a 10-25. The 10-25 is uncapped and it's a little bit too big for me right now. So it looks like we're stuck playing some more 2-5, which it's all right. It's still 1,500 max. And also I have prepaid $550 worth of rake. So I'm going to take that out of the bankroll at the end of the video. But let's get straight into some poker hands. Here we are in Dallas. We played a little bit of 1-2, then sat down at the 2-5 with $1,430. First hand I played Ace-King, won $7. Then I played this hand, and the hand after this I played King-Queen suited and also won $7. So let's hope this is a big one. Under the gun is raised up to $25, a little bit on the big side. A little bit concerning, but I've got pocket king, so it's not really. So I raise it up to $80. Folds around to the small blind, who now puts in the cold 4-bet up to $255. Folds back around to us, and weighing all my options here, and my nerves just started kicking in here. Haven't had this for quite a while, but I don't know, I couldn't really think straight. My hands were shaking. I don't know what was going on. But anyways, I decided a 5-bet was definitely in order. It's pocket kings. And it's between a jam or a min 5-bet. I think a min 5-bet does allow him to continue with maybe some of his bluffs, like an ace-queen suited type hand, or even something as weak as like pocket jacks, which we don't mind seeing a flop against. So I decided to go for the min 4-bet. It's more than 25% of my stack, which I don't really like, but anyways, I raised up to $430. And look at my little handshake. It's so cute. I even dropped $50 and couldn't even pick it up to put it back in my stack. After this, my opponent just ships it all in. Pretty gross spot, but we're not folding here, I don't think. That kind of sucks. So I call it. I tell my opponent I have pocket kings. He says I have aces. Welcome to Texas. Flop comes down. King, queen, 9, 2 spades, 1 club. Beautiful. Turn is the 9 of diamonds. We boat up. River is a safe 5 of hearts, and we're going to double up on our second ever 2-5 hand. I seem to always be on the wrong side of kings versus aces, but this one worked out for us. We pick up a slightly weaker hand, king 9 suited, an early position raised to 15, hijack has called, and I decide to put in the squeeze. I make it 65 to go, folds back round, and they both make the call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop of king 4 deuce rainbow. We got the backdoor flush draw, but a pretty weak king, so when it checks to me, I'm just going to put this one in my check range and check it back. Turn is the 8 of hearts, introducing a flush draw, and a pretty neutral card, but under the gun now bets up for 55, quarter pot. Hijack gets out the way. Raising is a little bit thin, I think, here, so I'm just going to call and see what happens on the river. River is the 4 of diamonds, and my opponent once again fires out a small bet of 110. For this size, we got to raise for value here. We're just going to be missing out on too much. So even if he does have some king tens and king jacks that we value on ourselves with, I think that's okay. And then we put an 8 in a rough spot, or any sort of pocket pair that's between queens and fives, something like that. So I raise it up to $400, put my opponent to the test. He's thinking it over, and I don't know, we're mostly hoping for a call. But it doesn't come to that. My opponent does toss in the fold, and we're going to pick up a pretty sweet pot here. In this next hand, we have an early position raise to 15 and a button call. The early position player is a pretty good reg, so I'm going to play some proper ranges here. You want to be 3-betting from the small, or sorry, squeezing from the small blind quite linearly. So I just drop all the suited 1-gappers for my range, and then just use my strongest suited connectors. I probably wouldn't use 8-9 suited versus an early position raise though, so Jack 10 suited is definitely going to make it in there. I squeeze to 75, big blind folds, under the gun calls, and button also calls. One thing I've noticed here in Dallas is that once you 3-bet, everyone calls. Not just the original raiser, everyone. So we're going 3 ways to a flop of Jack 5 rainbow. There it is. We're running really good today. I start with a small bet of $50, but quarter pot sounds good for a paired board, especially multi-way. Under the gun makes a call, and button folds. Off to the turn, which is a 7 of diamonds. Look over my opponent's stack, and he's got about 4 SPR here. So we're going to go around pot here, and then we can ship the river. So I size up to a pretty nice $325. My opponent once again makes the call. Head into the river, which is a 8 of hearts, so 10-9 gets there, but how likely is that? It's just 10-9 of diamonds, and I don't know. But anyways, we do lose to better jacks, but I'm not that worried. And I think that going all in here does make it look like we're pretty heavy on bluffs, because my like aces, kings, queens are really just not taking this line. So I'm really only saying I have trips here or nothing. So hoping to get heroed off, I fire out an all-in wager, $950 to go, and my opponent snap folds. So not getting paid that one, but picking up a pretty nice pot here. Let me know down below what you guys think of this camera angle. We pick up ace-jack offsuit, next to act after the straddle, raise things up to $25, and we go 7 ways to the flop. So, can we hit something big? We flop ace, 3, deuce, 2 hearts, top pair, an okay kicker. We're bound to have the best hand most of the time here, but when it checks to me, we are 7 ways, so I'm just going to check this and avoid some pretty tough spots. Now checks around to low jack, who fires out a very small bet of $30. That is a very small bet. We get 1 caller, and now the big blind raises up to 110, which is a very small raise as well. It's less than the size of the pot. So when it folds back to me, I'm just going to call here and play some turns. So I'm tossing the call, middle position folds, and now low jack ships his whole stack, $875 into the middle, cutoff folds, big blind folds, and now it's back on me. And this is the spot I was trying to avoid by checking, but it didn't work. A little bit rough, but LoJack is a crazy player. He could have a ton of stuff here. He could have 8-6 of hearts and be doing this. He could have pocket 4s and doing this. He could have 3-4 suited. So versus this opponent, I don't think we can find a fold. He's only repping 4-5, pocket 3s, pocket 2s, really. For some reason, I didn't think about ace-3 and ace-deuce suited, for whatever reason, but I decided to give this guy some action. I toss in the call. We go to a turn, which is the jack of spades. River, 4 of clubs, not my favorite, but I table, and my opponent shows the ace-deuce. We've got it in bad twice today and won both runouts. That is a rough beat from my friend over there, but we are scooping another pretty big pot here. Now, this hand isn't big by any means, but I did want to include it because there was a little bit of shenanigans going on. But I pick up pocket kings again. Under the gun has limped, and I raise things up to $30. Same player from the last hand makes the call on the button, and the limper also calls. So, limper, I'm very worried about 6 high flops. He's going to have a lot of pocket pairs here. Like, that's his entire range, is 2s through 6s. And button could have anything. So we go to a flop of 8-5 deuce, 2 diamonds, 1 heart. Really not a flop I'm happy to see. So when it checks to me, I'm going to play some pot control and check it over. Button now fires out for $25. Now the under the gun player fires out a raise of 85. And now I'm stuck in between a pretty nitty player under the gun, who's now making a raise, and a crazy player on the button who could just ship it all in. And it's a pretty gross spot. And I think I can get behind a call, but I just think it's so close to 0 EV between calling and folding here. So even if they both got like draws, like if I'm against like 6-7 and 3-4 of diamonds, I'm pretty sure like I'm not even ahead here. So I just toss my hand into the muck, but I'm gonna play out the rest of the hand for you guys. Button makes a call. We go to a turn, which is 10 of hearts. Under the gun now fires out for a pot size bet of 250. Button makes a call. River is the ace of spades. Under the gun now checks it, and Button fires out an all-in wager of only $340. Under the gun he says he has an ace, so it looks like he had ace something of diamonds, and he holds a chip on the back of his hand and says, call it. Button says, you call? And the guy says, call it. And then Button flips over his hand, which is the 3-4 of diamonds, and now the other player is trying to muck his hand. I don't know, it seems wrong to say call it twice like that. And also, chips don't have sides. So I don't know what the flip was about. But anyways, they argued, and he's like, I'm not calling now that I've seen the hand, because the guy's got the nuts. And then I suggested, why doesn't he just flip a coin, and then if it lands on heads, he pays. If it lands on tails, he loses. And he wasn't keen to do that either. But I don't know. I feel like that would be the fair solution. What would you guys do there? Also, my folded pocket kings was just terrible. I don't know. I'm still like maybe only have 30-40% equity on that flop. So I don't mind a fold, even though I was ahead. I don't know. Roast me. Go for it. I am picking up the pocket aces here. I raise things up to $15. Same player's last hand who had the 3-4 diamonds 3-bets me to 30. Beautiful. Folds back to me. I throw in the 4-bet up to $100. And even better news, my opponent throws in the 5-bet to $250. We are 6-bet shoving here. I ship it all in. My opponent calls. I tell him I have pocket aces. He says, me too. God damn it. We go to a flop of 8-8-7-2 clubs. Turn. The 10 of clubs.
No!
I have lost this once before. Never won it, but lost it once. River. 7 of diamonds. We're safe. We show, and we go aces versus aces. It is a new day here in Dallas, a new session. I pick up pocket queens to kick us off. The under the gun straddle is live. Low jack and cutoff have called, and I raise the pocket queens up to $60. Only one of the limpers calls in the cutoffs. We are heads up to a flop of queen 9-6 rainbow. Pretty nice flop and top set here. I start with a small bet of 40, and cutoff now throws in a raise up to 125. I look over to stack, and I think trapping is probably the best play here. So I just toss in the call. We head to the turn, which is one of my least favorite cards. It's this 8 of hearts, introducing a flush draw, and the most obvious straight draw, Jack 10, does get there. 7-8 also has picked up some more equity, so I'm not in love with this hand, so hoping to get it in here. I check it over, and my opponent checks behind. Not loving it. River is the 5 of diamonds, so 8-7 does get there. There is a one-liner to a straight, but we still have pocket queens, and if he was raising value on the flop, we just got to go for it. So I ship it all in here. My opponent snap calls. I show, and it's good. It's good. Whew. Pocket queens are good. So middle position has raised up to $30 over the under the gun straddle. Cutoff has called, and I've got 5-4 suited in the small blind. If I want to play this, it's going to be a squeeze or a fold, so I make it 150 to go. Big blind folds, straddle folds, middle position does make the call, and so does the cutoff. We are 3 ways to a flop of ace, ace, deuce, 1 diamond, 2 spades. We've got the backdoor flush draw as well as the gut shot. So I start with a very small bet of 100. Middle position folds, but cutoff does stick around for the 100. We're off to the turn, which is an 8 of clubs. Basically a blank unless he has pocket 8s, and SPR is looking around 2. So I think we want to fire out one more bet, kind of sort of fold out his flush draws and his like middling pocket pairs that kind of stuck around for a very small bet on the flop. So I fire out once more for $325. I think this should have been $375. But anyways, my opponent thinks about it for a bit and then makes a call. River is the 5 of hearts. We're beating flush draws now, and I think he's just most likely just got an ace. So I'm just going to check it over, and my opponent does check behind. I table my hand, and my opponent shows the ace 10 of clubs. That is going to win. That is an expensive bluff. We are playing against the same opponent as the last hand. Let's get some redemption. He has raised up to $30, and I put in 3-bet up to 125, which is really big. I really can't do math. Maybe he raised up to 40. I think that would make more sense, because this should be $100, but I made it 125. Folds back around, and my opponent does make the call. So we're heads up to a flop of Jack 9-5, 2 spades. Pretty nice. We got top pair, pretty good kicker. And a pot that's only like 5 SPR, we're probably going to go broke here on blank blanks. So my opponent checks it over. I fire out a half pot bet of 125. My opponent does make the call. Head to the turn, hoping for a blank. It is the 10 of hearts. That is not a blank. When it checks to me, this is just going to improve him way too much. So I'm going to start doing a lot of checking here on this turn. So I check it over. And we're heading to the river, which is not great. It's the king of hearts. Like, we do make top 2, but now any queen is a straight. Now my opponent fires out, but it's only for 165, which is like quarter pot-ish, maybe a third. And for this size, thought it over for a bit. We're never folding. But I think we're good here, and I think my opponent's trying to get to showdown with a hand like Jack 10, Jack 9, some kind of weaker 2 pair, and I really want to get some value. So I debated between going all in, making it look really polarized, or just trying to squeeze out the tiniest little bit of value with a min raise, and I did land on min raise here, so I raised things up to $330. Doesn't take my opponent long, and he does make the folds. We couldn't get that extra little bit of value there. Okay, the straddle is live. Hijack has limped, and I looked down at pocket 7s in the big blind, raised things up to $60, and the straddle as well as the limper make the call. We went to a really good flop of ace, king, 5, 2 diamonds. Ace, king with a very low card is the best board for the initial raiser. We just have all the strongest hands here, so I fired a very small bet of $40. Under the gun makes a call, or makes a fold, and now Hijack puts in a raise to 125, which is just insane. I don't believe this at all. So I toss in the call. We head to the turn, which is the 3 of diamonds. Check it over once again. My opponent keeps firing for 150. I still don't believe this, and we also do pick up a flush draw, so I'm just going to toss in the call here. Head to the river, which is a jack of hearts. I check it over. My opponent now checks it behind. I'm feeling pretty good. I roll over my pocket 7s. And then my opponent shows ace, 8 of clubs for one of the thinnest raises I've ever seen on the flop. Yeah, I was very shocked to see this. But that is a winner. He's going to win that hand. On to the next hand. Low Jack has raised up to $35. This is quite a big raise for him. He's usually around the $15 to $20 mark, so we are going to have to be pretty selective about our bluffs here. I dropped a bunch of suited 1-gappers from my range, as well as ace 4 and ace 3 suited aren't going to make it in there. Ace 5 suited is just the premium bluff hand though, so I'm going to go ahead and throw in the 3-bet up to $140. Big blind folds, and Low Jack makes the call. Heads up to a pretty good flop for my range. It's king 8-6 all hearts. Now king high flops with king high monotone flops are pretty good for the pre-flop aggressor, as we're just going to have a lot more nut flushes than my opponent. If this flop was ace 8-6 all hearts, pretty brutal board for us, as we're just disproportionately going to have a lot less flushes than Low Jack, right? We're 3-betting all of our suited aces, and now they just don't exist, right? We're going to have less like king queens and queen jacks, and my opponent is going to be able to call in position. So anyways, this board is very good for us. We're going to start with a very small bet of $70 quarter pot. My opponent makes a call. Off to the turn, which is a jack of hearts. And so now, if we have the ace of hearts, we want to keep betting because we're at like 2 SPR. So it's kind of tough to find bluffs here. I really don't want to have a pair, as those hands are just going to be able to be to call the flop and now have to fold the turn. So I don't want to have pairs. I want my opponent to have pairs. So this hand is nice. The 5 of clubs is really nice because there's no hands that float the flop that have a 5. The ace of clubs, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not that great. So I think this hand makes a pretty good bluff. I fire out once again for 265. Opponent thinks it over. It is a pretty tough spot if you don't have the ace of hearts. And he eventually does lay down and shows the 10 of hearts, which I think I'd fold that too, to be honest. It's not many people bluff on the turn when it completes like this in 3-bet pots with just complete air. So yeah, but we're picking up this pot and we're going to be back to even. The under the gun player has straddled, Low Jack has limped, and I have king 9 suited in the hijack. raise things up to $50, and we go pretty multi-way. We go 5 ways to a flop, which comes down all right. It is king 10 8 2 hearts. So we've got top pair, weak kicker, checks it over to me, and 5 ways. We're just going to check this hand back. Cutoff also checks. We're going to a turn which is not great. It's a jack of diamonds, ace queen, and queen 9 and 7 9 all get there, as well as jack 10, king jacks, hands like that. King jacks are already beating us anyways. Now under the gun fires out for $100, a little over a third. Low jack calls, and I honestly think folding is totally fine here. But we do have an open ender. It's not great, but and top pair, so I toss in the call. Cutoff also calls, and now small blind folds. So we're going 4 ways to this turn. Are there even any good turn cards? There is. It's the king of diamonds, so we now counterfeit jack 10, 10 8. Checks to me, and I think about it for a bit. Cutoff is a very aggressive player to my left, so I don't mind trapping a little bit here. And it's also going to be really tough for us to get value. Our kicker doesn't even play. And what's going to hero us off here? Like queen jack? I doubt it. So I just check this one back, see if Cutoff wants to do anything. Cutoff does check it back, so I show my hand, and it is good. We are going to scoop that pot. That was dangerous. We're picking up the pocket aces again. Under the gun straddle is live. Middle position has limped, and I raise things up to $50. Big blind now calls, and now it gets around to under the gun, who is in the tank. This seems good. And eventually he fires out a 3-bet of $225 to go. Middle position folds, and now it's back on me. Look over to stack, and he's got around 1,300 to start the hand. So I think a 4-bet is in order here. Obviously, we have aces. I don't want to trap and let the big blind in behind, so I'm thinking it over. I was thinking what size I can 4-bet to. A min 4-bet I thought was going to be $350. But I'm like, that's perfect. You know, 350, that's 25% of 1,400. Perfect, just where I want to be. So I raise it up to 350, and then the dealer says no, can't do that, and I actually have to raise it up to 400, which is too big. He's only got 1,300, so this is like 30% of his stack. I don't like the size at all. Big blind now folds, and now it's back on under the gun. He thinks it over, and then makes a call. So we're going heads up to a flop of jack 5-3, 2 spades, 1 club. He checks it over to me, and we're going to start with a very small bet here. We're going to bet our entire range. So I fire it out for $200, a little bit less than a quarter pot. My opponent makes a call. Off to the turn, looking for no spade. It is the 8 of clubs, pretty much a blank. My opponent checks it over once again. Now I'm sitting here, and this tank was quite a while because I was trying to add up the pot, and I thought the pot was $700. I was like, oh, perfect. That's 1 SPR. I go 40%, 40%. The pot's $1,200. So once I realized it was $1,200 and my opponent only has $700, there's only one size to go here. I ship it all in. My opponent doesn't love it. He's tanking. He's thinking about it. He's thinking it over. And eventually, he does watch the vlogs, so he knows I do get up some nonsense. He does toss in the call. We go to the river. It is the queen of diamonds. I tell my opponent I have aces, and he mucks without me showing. That's a lot of trust to put in me. Thank you. But aces are going to hold, and my opponent later told me he had pocket 10s. He was just hoping I had a backdoor flush or a flush draw, something like that, which is pretty reasonable. But we're going to pick up that pretty nice pot, and we're going to win something. We're going to win a pretty nice 2 sessions over here at the Dallas, Texas Card House. Alright, folks, that was a very warm welcome to Texas. I got it in bad quite a bit. My bluffs got called, and I folded the best hand. And I still won heaps, so went pretty well. Both games I was in for $1,500 day 1, cashed out, and I won $2,370 day 2, $1,565 for a total win of $3,935. We do have to take away the $550 I paid in rake, so that's going to come out of the bankroll, which is going to bring the bankroll from $35,592 all the way up to $38,977. If we convert this back into Canadian dollars, that is $53,147. That's halfway, folks. We are halfway to $100,000. Given that this is a pretty big milestone, let's take a look at the stats. Up until this point, I began playing in April, late April, And so this has been about 7 months of poker. Not full time, it's not 40 hours a week, but let's take a look at this here. All right, so over here, this is my total winnings. The bankroll is at $38,977. This does include the $1,330 I deposited originally, the $550 I paid in rake, as well as the $4,113 that I removed from the bankroll when I converted it from Canadian to USD. Net profit is over here, $42,310. That is how much I've won at the live poker tables. It's pretty solid. Hourly rate down here of $64.60. I am very, very happy with that, especially considering more than half of my volume was 1-3, which was the $400 max with $12 rake. My won percentage is only 56%, which seems kind of low. I think the median is around 55 to 60. So I think I'm on the low end there. Heading down here, we can see that my big blinds per hour is nearly 16 BBs an hour, which I think is pretty good considering most of it was, short stacked 1-3. And so yeah, let's take a look at my 1-3 stats now. Over here, net profit $10,990. That's around $11,000 just in 1-3, and 385 hours played with an hourly rate of $28.55. Nearly 10 big blinds an hour with the ridiculous rake. So pretty good. Won percentage 55%. It's definitely on the low end there. But let's take a look at the bigger sessions. These are mostly played in the States now. This is everything from 2-5, 5-5, 5-10, and the one session I played of 5-10-20. Boom. Net profit, $31,320. Almost all of that is USD. We've only put in about 270 hours here, so less than half of our volume. We do have an hourly rate of 116 an hour, which is just mental. That's so much money. Win rate is a little bit higher at 58%, so creeping up on the higher end of 55 to 60 scale. And let's take a look at the big blinds per hour, shall we? 24.99 big blinds per hour. That is really, really nice. You can see I clearly excel at the deep stack games with 25 big blind an hour win rate. I think it's just a lot easier to kind of push your edge, especially if you're very aggressive like me when the stacks get deeper. Right, most people, if they're buying in for 300 big blinds, they're not even going to play a 600 big blind pot in like once every 5 sessions. Then I sit down and my stack is in the middle, 3 or 4 times. And, it's a big hit for them if they're wrong, because they don't play these massive pots that often. And here I am just shoving 300 big blinds in there with a counterfeit pair. And so I think that's just, having that extra fold equity from being able to pile in a 2x overbet on the river is just one of the things that is helping my win rate get up to this high. Also, probably should say that I am probably running well if I am hitting this 25 big blinds an hour. But yeah, that is it for me. Beautiful, nearly $40,000 in the bankroll. And that is only 7 months from $100 all the way up to 53,147 Canadian. Honestly, if this is even semi-close to my true win rate, which I'll be able to find out by probably the end of this trip, I may have to delay getting back to my life in Vancouver. Maybe plan a few months in Montreal, Cambodia, Vietnam, and then a short stop in Sydney, and then hit up the EPT Barcelona. But that's all in the air. We will see. Only time will tell. And thank you, everyone, once again. Seriously, thank you for watching, commenting, liking, doing all the things. Can I get 53,147 likes on this video? Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.